The NHO Show.
You got that pressure.
NHO Show. We are back. And Colin, it's basically the mid-season of the NHL season. The regular season of hockey has reached its almost midpoint.
Yeah, well, I think every team has played more than 41 games now, so we're officially past it, and it's been interesting to say the least.
It has been. So what are some highlights? What are some highlights for you from the first half of the season?
Well, I mean, the two big ones that stand out to me, first one, I think everyone it kind of thinks the same way, is the Vegas Golden Knights and that story, how they're second in the entire league in points, lead the Western Conference, and it's an expansion roster that a lot of people had pegged near the bottom of the league to finish. So I don't think anyone could have predicted them being so successful so quickly. That's one. Number two, as an Avalanche fan, they just won their 7th straight game and are in the playoff hunt. And I mean, I expected them to be better, but I didn't expect them to be this good. But we'll kind of touch on them a little later, both Vegas and Colorado, and some crazy stats I'm going to throw at you. But what about you?
Vegas for sure. Definitely a surprise there. I mean, that's like my big standout highlight. I was going to say on the Avs side, how do you feel about? Do you think that the Avs would be doing as well if they still had Matt Duchene?
I do not, no. Mainly because, well, I thought you needed to get traded before the season started, and I thought that was a screw-up on Joe Zakic's part not to get it done, just because it was just a cloud hanging over the room. Like, it was just one of those, it was a drama situation, and it attracted all these questions all the time. They couldn't just focus on the task at hand. And as it's come out after he's been traded, he requested a trade a while ago, and he wanted out of there, and I think the leadership group there, like Eric Johnson and Landeskog, were really kind of relieved to see him go, because they wanted to be around guys that wanted to be there on Colorado and try to right the ship rather than guys that wanted out. So I think it was just kind of, you could tell by the way, like, they're having fun again and everything too. So I think just from an outside perspective, it kind of looks like a weight's been lifted. So, and obviously we've seen how that turned out for Ottawa as well. I mean, nothing against Matt Duchene. I think he's a great guy and everything, but it's just one of those situations that had to be dealt with, and it's better sooner than later.
Absolutely. I like that he's finding his footing a little bit with the Ottawa Senators. Whether he stays there for that much longer, we'll see what happens. I think one more story I guess we can talk about too is kind of the stumbling of the Edmonton Oilers, and how everyone on the flip side of Vegas, everyone had expectations of them maybe being cup contenders. And I mean, Connor McDavid's still having a good year, but he's not having like a Connor McDavid type year, even though he's like still top 10 NHL scoring, point per game and everything. But people just had way more expectations of them, and it'd take a miracle at this point for them to make the playoffs. So it's kind of a write-off season for them. It's interesting to me, sort of the idea of expectations, when you place certain expectations on teams, and you expect, and then how that carries through seasons going forward. So, for example, being a Maple Leafs fan, for people who do watch hockey, it astounds me the number of people that say, when I say I'm a Maple Leafs fan, they say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, have you watched hockey in the last year or 2?
3 years,
3 years? A name like Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner, does that ring a bell to you at all? But it's this idea of expectations, that the expectations were so low for the Maple Leafs for so long that just carries forward, and it carries through, that even people who have been watching hockey and are up on the latest hockey news it doesn't necessarily come into the culture until you get that cup-winning team or that consistent playoff team. And so I think with the Oilers, same kind of thing. the Oilers are living up to, or trying to live up to, an expectation that is completely unrealistic. And it's like, just let them play their game at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, and I think you can apply that to not just hockey, but to life. Like, anytime you approach a situation and have certain expectation in your head about how it should be, it's going to get in the way of how it actually is, and you're probably going to be disappointed more often than not. And especially with a young team like Edmonton, like last year, they had no expectations, and same with Colorado this year, and same with the Golden Knights this year. Like, when players don't have any pressure on them, it's just they can go in, do their thing, have fun, and the results come. So you have to have kind of a culture of winning, or that experience of winning, like veteran teams like Chicago and LA and Pittsburgh, to kind of be able to deal with those expectations right away. And after Edmonton did so well last year, I think it was kind of hard for them to follow that act. So I think they'll rebound next year. I think it'd be hard for them not to with all their talent, but yeah, it's crazy what pressure can do on the psyche of an athlete.
Absolutely. So speaking of pressure, probably one of the biggest pressures an athlete can feel is the Olympics, and the pressure of, and especially if you play hockey and play for Canada in the Olympics, the pressure of winning gold is so high and so strong if you are a hockey player representing Team Canada. And this year, men's hockey will not be represented by the NHL will not be represented in men's hockey, which opens up a whole can of worms and a whole new pool of talent to choose from, specifically players from the KHL. So, Colin, what do you think about kind of the roster? How do you think Canada's going to fare? Do you think expectations are as high as they have been in previous Olympics? Three-part question.
I think I haven't checked actually today, but I realized that's the 15th, and I think that's when the rest of the rosters are going to release. And I haven't been able to really look at them all. I've looked at the states and ours, and I mean, you have an idea of who's going to be there for quote unquote Russia, who's actually not going to be able to be participating under Russia. But I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I haven't watched a lot of these guys play in a long time, and like we've mentioned before, like it's kind of, to me, kind of like the Spengler Cup of hockey rosters, and I don't know how much I like our chances, and I wouldn't, as a Canadian, I don't really have any expectations because, like you said, like all of our best players won't be there, whereas European countries and Russia, and they all have the benefit of a lot of their best players staying at home and playing in their local leagues rather than coming to the NHL. Because, like, say you're Russian and you grow up in Russia and you're in the top six in Russia as far as forward goes, but in the NHL you'd be like a bottom six player getting 12 minutes a night and getting paid way less. Like, what is the motivation to come over? So they have all those guys, and like I said, Russia's going to have Kovalchuk, Datsuk, like big name players, and a lot of the players we have are guys that are either retired from the NHL or have been playing in Europe for a while. I mean, there's recognizable names, and I actually had a chuckle because a lot of them, I think like 6 of them are former Avalanche guys, which just goes to show you how bad the Avs have been in recent years. But I think, like, we don't have great offense. It's going to be, again, kind of similar to the World Juniors, where we're going to have to score by committee. The defense is full of kind of smaller puck-moving guys, which should be good on big ice. I think our goaltending will actually be pretty solid with Scrivens and Peters and Poulin, whoever is the hot hand there. But again, on the big ice, it's gonna be hard for us to compete against some of those guys that have been growing up playing their whole lives. So we'll be in tough, and I think it's better if Canadians just kind of go in it with an open mind and just cheer on the boys and hope for the best, because I don't know if anyone can really expect what's going to happen.
This is true. Now, as much as, yes, these players haven't been playing, haven't grown up on big ice, they've really grown up playing on smaller ice. There are a number of players who have been playing in Europe in the KHL, so there is that. Yeah. At least there's that experience there. Whereas in previous Olympics, there hasn't been that same level of big ice experience that our team does bring this year. So it might it might put Canada on a bit more of an even playing field as far as skill goes, and not having to worry about, will our NHL players be able to, will be able to transition to the big ice. Now it's kind of a more even field between, the top Canadian non-NHL players and, the top Russian players and the top Finnish players or Swiss players and etc. So I actually am a little bit more concerned about Ben Scrivens. I think it was this, and it sucks because I used to be a big Ben Scrivens fan.
Actually, yeah.
And then, but he had a really hard time, I think, at the Spengler Cup. Like, he really was having a hard time. I want to say it was the Spengler.
Yeah, I haven't actually followed. Like, I haven't followed him much since he's been out of the NHL.
Or one of the last tournaments that kind of popped up that was a solid, like, Olympic preview. He's having a hard time, and I, to me, it's a little bit. I guess, like, I'm like, there's obviously a reason why he's on the roster, but were there no other goalies that could have taken that third roster spot? So. But we'll see what the lineup ends up being. We'll see if he starts or if he's just kind of the backup of the backup and plays a game or two. And he's obviously on that roster for a reason, likely experience. So he'll bring that to the team, at least. I'm a little sad. I guess part of me was hoping that there was going to be some standout CHL player who was going to somehow make it. There was no word and no confirmation of CHL players were actually going to go to the Olympics. It was just kind of a pipe dream, I think, for a long time. But after World Juniors and stuff, I was like, kind of really hoping there might be some standout CHL player who blows everybody away and, is this swan song of this amazing, story that people can get behind, and then it would then propel some media attention towards our Olympic roster, because right now as it stands, no one really cares.
Yeah, and again, I'm not surprised, like, as far as all the leagues rule, and I like you said, I don't know if the CHL even came out and said we're not going, but it doesn't make any sense for the CHL to let people go. But again, we kind of get screwed over the most because of any minor league, any other league in the whole world. Like, there's mostly Canadians in the NHL, in the AHL, I guess, but a lot of the guys that are going are in the A, but also the CHL. Whereas a lot of kids that haven't made the NHL yet from the States are in the NCAA. So the one guy that could have gone from the NCAA as a Canadian was Cale Makar, and there was talk about that, but he turned it down, and a lot of people are kind of upset about that. But I mean, I get it as far as his perspective. He was just at the World Juniors and he won gold, and he even though he got named to the tournament all-star team, he only ended up playing like an average of just over 10 minutes a night, I think. And he didn't want to be, I don't think, that seventh defenseman PP specialist again and miss even more time with his team at University of Massachusetts. So I think he made the call to be loyal to his teammates and to trying to get back to the team that he committed to. But there's Troy Terry is on the States team, Jordan Greenway, both out in NCAA. So not only are some of the teams have like those high-end guys like Kovalchuk and Datsuk from the KHL, but a lot of the teams have even their best prospects playing. Like Dahlin will be there, like Pettersson will probably be there for Sweden, and Tolvanen will be there for the Finns. So we kind of have just a group of misfits toys that we're sending that are either, they're past their prime or they never made the NHL. And I mean, it could be one of those like miracle on ice moments where that's what I was going to ask. I don't know. Do you know if they've named the coach yet? I don't recall seeing that anywhere.
I haven't seen the coach.
Because I'm a big believer, as we've seen again with the Golden Knights and even with Team Canada at the World Juniors, like, you don't have to have the best players, but if they play in the best system and everyone plays their role, like, you can win a hockey game, right? And especially in these one and done games like tournaments. So you never know, but we definitely have, I guess, like I said, we have the worst situation as a country with the leagues that decided not to go not going, because everyone else at least has some of the high-end prospects or former NHLers to draw from, and we don't really have that.
This is true. So sorry, Willie Desjardins
Sorry.
has been named coach. We did name a coach.
Willie Desjardins?
Yeah.
Okay.
Desjardins.
Interesting.
Yeah, sorry. That was my bad.
Okay.
I was like, wait a minute, there's gotta be a coach.
Yeah, no, I should have checked that too.
Way to go. We're firing on all cylinders today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Do you have any more thoughts on the Olympics? I'm to be honest, I'm more excited to watch the girls play than the guys.
because women's hockey.
I know we actually have a really good chance to win, and I think it'll be more exciting, at least from a Canadian standpoint. So
I think the great thing about women's hockey is that it's not going to be any different from, like, the women's program won't be any different from previous Olympics. Right. I mean, you're not going to have Haley Wickenheiser. Okay, that's fine. But
that's fair.
But you got Spooner. Spooner's one of my favorite female players of all time. But yeah, you've got some really, really incredible female athletes who have represented Canada on multiple occasions in the Olympics. The women's program isn't going to be any different from what we've seen in the past. So, I really do hope it draws a few more eyes. And I hope that, not having NHLers in the men's program is going to draw some eyes to other teams and to players that you might see in the NHL in a couple of years, or who might make the transition after the Olympics. Because it's pretty safe to say the Olympics will be in Beijing, the NHL will be in Beijing in another 4 years. So I think for a lot of these, for some of these players, this is who are representing other countries, this is kind of almost their NHL tryout to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great opportunity for those guys that are going. And I don't mean to knock the athletes that are going to be there, because I think it'll be a great experience and they'll enjoy it. And it's a great, like you said, opportunity for them to showcase their talent on the world stage, and who knows where it could lead for a lot of them. So exactly.
Well, let's move on to All-Star roster. So let's keep the roster talk going, but switch it to All-Star because that's a little bit sooner, and then we can actually talk about NHL players being there. Imagine it's like, no, we're actually just going to talk about the AHL All-Star week. Which, if you're someone like John Scott, you could also play in. Case in point, his 1 year in Nashville.
Imagine he made the Olympic team.
What's that?
So imagine he made the Olympic
team. Oh my god. I think he's done. He got his money. He got his car. He got his van. He's got his 4 kids. He's like, you know what? I'm good. Guys. I'm good. Life is good for John Scott and his family. But it was funny because in Nashville he was allowed to, because of the whole that whole weird trade thing where he got traded to Montreal and then but sent down to the AHL so that he wouldn't be allowed to play in the NHL All-Star. So he was allowed to play in the NHL All-Star week, but then as soon as he was done that, he had to go return to his AHL team, but then was selected for the AHL All-Star team. So, he got to play 2 different All-Star games in the same year. And
I mean, a good trivia question in a few years.
There you go. Fun facts. So let's talk about All-Star rosters, because those are fun.
Not without controversy, as usual.
As always.
Say. I'll just rant. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
You're upset. Tell us why you're upset.
Rail off a few names that I don't really think are deserving, and kind of just got chosen to be there. First of all, I think it's kind of silly. I mean, I get why they do it, but I don't like that they have to pick a player from each team, because it really leaves guys that deserve to be there off the roster. And I find that even though there's a lot of teams that already had a representative, but then the NHL chose like a second or third representative from that team that I was kind of like, it was kind of a questionable call. The guy that stands out the most, I think, for me with that is Chris Letang. So Chris Letang and Crosby both got selected from Pittsburgh because they're big names, everyone recognizes them, but Phil Kessel is leading their team in scoring, like goals, assists, and points. So it's kind of weird that he wasn't selected. And I mean, if you're gonna, and Letang isn't having like that great of a year, like if you're selecting someone from that division, why don't you give it to, a different defenseman in that division, like John Carlson or Gosses Bear, who have more points than Letang. So there's kind of some decisions like that, like Noah Hannafin. I mean, I guess I get why he's there. Again, it's just one of those things. Who else are you going to pick from Carolina? They don't really have a standout guy. So the Pacific Division, in my mind, was totally screwed up because they've got Ricard Raquel there, who is a great player. I love him, but not an all-star, I don't think. And John Gibson's not there, yet Marc-Andre Fleury is, even though he'd missed half the year. And it's not like you needed a Golden Knights representative because James Neal's there. So why don't you... Oh, and in the Pacific, staying with the Pacific, Ekman Larson, again, great defenseman, but he's leading the league in plus-minus on the wrong end of the spectrum. He's like a minus almost 40, I think. So why don't you put John Gibson in instead of Marc-Andre Fleury? There's your Ducks representative. Then as your forward to replace Raquel, you can put in Clayton Keller, and then you don't have to have a Coyotes representative on the blue line, and then you pick another guy like, who else is in that division? I'm just trying to think. But anyways, you kind of get my point. Like there's a lot of guys that I think kind of got there based on their names and because of the whole team rule that just, I don't know, didn't really do it for me,
Mm-hmm. I know.
I think Morgan Riley will go, though, because Hedman's hurt now. So, but I just think there's guys, like I said, John Gibson, Kessel, Voracek's a big guy that was left off. Like Freddie Anderson, too. Like Carey Price got named.
Again.
Carey Price not really having a big year, like not really deserving, but just because he's Carey Price. So
I wonder if he would have put up a tantrum if, like, a couple of these players, if they would have put up a tantrum if they didn't get selected.
I don't think so, really. Like, I think some of the veteran guys, like Letang and Crosby, would almost enjoy the break, especially since a lot of those guys have battled injuries for the last few years. So, and Pittsburgh's played a ton of hockey the last couple of years with their cup wins. So, I think the NHL wants them there for, obviously, media reasons and stuff, but I don't know, give some of the other guys a chance. Like Eric Stahl, like, love the guy again, but I don't know. Again, it's just one of those things. You have to find a representative from each team. So some of those teams don't really have a standout guy, and you kind of have to go fishing for that and work around other things for that to happen. So, I don't know. And you have any thoughts?
They're just like, I think my thoughts are, along the same lines of there are a couple of players who are chosen solely based on their name. If you ask Sidney Crosby how much he loves the All-Star game, he would probably be like, yeah, I can take it or leave it. I mean, like, he loves to play hockey, so there's that. But I think, like you said, like, he could probably use the week off, and given his injuries, it's probably almost more warranted than anything else. Give Crosby the year off, but also at the same time, can you actually sell tickets if you give Crosby the year off?
That's the thing. I mean, yeah, it's a hard sell, the All-Star game, and it's become a bit of, even more of a gimmick now with the 3-on-3 tournament. I mean, it's fun to watch. It's because we all love 3-on-3 overtime, but I really think it's going to get stale in like even as soon as next year. Which is why, boom, 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 I have a new kind of format suggestion that I think they should do to kind of spice it up again. And it's one I think that will continue to be kind of interesting. But I think they should maybe even alternate 3-on-3 with this new format, like every other year, just to keep it fresh. and it is under 25 versus 25 and over as far as age goes.
Oh, kind of like a North America, like Team North America versus Team Canada, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the whole world. So some of the best players, and like I think it would actually be a really hard fought game, and I think it would almost be intense because obviously the young guys have a lot to prove. They're feisty and they're fun to watch and they're fast, and then the old veteran guys, well, old 25 and over, but like the older guys that are more established will want to kind of prove that they're still the cream of the crop in the league, and I think it would add a little competitive edge there. So yeah, you can add a lot of those guys that were on Team North America. I'm gonna come out with a blog post this week about like what the lineups would look like, but just to throw out a few names out there, like for under 25 would be McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, Line, Barkov, those kind of guys. And then over 25, you'd have, Taves, Crosby, Kane, Jamie Benn, kind of all those more established guys. So I think it'd be really fun to watch.
I'd love to see the goaltender on that younger team getting ready to face like Taves and Crosby and Kane, and
Well,
like they're just like shaking.
Last year though, at the
I know.
World
But it's
Cup,
like
there
that.
was John Gibson and Matt Murray, and Matt Murray's been hurt again this year, but John Gibson's been a top 10 goalie in the league this year. So, and then once like the McDavids and the McKinnons cross over 25, then they're playing the new young generation, right? So, I think again that's why you do it every other year, because if you did it every year, it'd be pretty similar rosters, at least for a couple of years in a row. But if you do it every other year with this 3-on-3 tourney, I think it would kind of keep both things fresh, and people would have a different thing to look forward to every year. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on it, because I think everyone really enjoyed watching Team North America play in the World Cup. I know I did, and it was just exciting seeing kind of the next generation get all together and see what they could do against the established guys.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the more exciting, and as the years progress and as the years go on, it's a shame that we don't have World Cup every year. Although after the season last year, I was kind of happy that there was no World Cup this year. Missed it kind of. Also enjoyed the extra time off. Anyway, either way.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't.
I think the players, probably appreciated not doing World Cup, given that there's Olympics and playoffs and all of these other things. But the great thing about the World Cup of Hockey was that you got this team, of these like ragtag young kids who are going to get to play together and who are going to be playing together for the rest of their hockey careers, and who are probably going to play on the same team at some point, and who are going to all grow up together and all learn from each other. And so it was a really great representation of what the league is going to look like in 10 years and who the hot shots are going to be in 10 years. And it would be nice to be able to see that team brought back together over and over again, just for the pure enjoyment of being able to kind of watch these kids grow up together and watch them play off each other and watch those relationships build. Because, the relationship at the end of the day is so important. You see like Crosby and McKinnon, for example, are best friends. And, and Marchand to an extent of that as well.
I don't know how anyone could really be best friends with Brad Marchand. But
like him and Crosby are best friends.
Yeah, Cole Harbor boys, that's why.
Yeah. Brad Marchand off the ice is actually a very nice person.
That was just a shot at Marchand because he's a little wiener on the ice.
Oh man, I can't stand him on the ice.
He'd be the first one to admit it.
Yeah. But off the ice, he's super, super, super nice. But yeah, on the ice, I'm like, I hate you. Get out of the way.
Great player, though. I think I saw a stat line that read he had, in his last, 82 games, he's got 100 points.
Oh, my God.
Which is crazy. Insane. Which is, when he first got drafted, even though was great in the World Juniors, too, I don't think anyone anticipated him putting up this amount of points. Everyone thought he'd be kind of like a Brandon Gallagher-type player his whole career, but he's really proven everybody wrong, and he's one of the elite players in the league, as much as I hate to say it.
Well, as the All-Star game approaches, at least for the next week, what was great about Nashville and great about John Scott is that there was a story to talk about. And last year we were in LA and it was great. And, it's wonderful to have nice weather. But there's zero vibe. Like, there's no excitement. There's no story to tell. There's no standout player. Even the players looked a little bored. And so I'm hoping that, I think that they need to find a story. I think the NHL, when they're choosing their teams or choosing, thinking about who's going to represent who, there needs to be some sort of story attached to it. And I guess last year it was the reveal of the NHL's top 100 players. But there needs to be something on the ice related to the game that tells a story, that makes you want to watch, that gives you those butterflies, that makes you excited, and, can give a player, that moment that he would have never otherwise gotten. And on Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman now have a podcast called 31 Thoughts. And I think, and the other day they were talking about how the team should be allowed to nominate a player. And that other player, you have your guy who's guaranteed, and then the team nominates another player, and it can be anybody. It doesn't have to. It could be anybody on the team, and it gives a shot to a guy who like John Scott may never have that chance otherwise.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, like, each team nominates a guy to represent them.
Yeah.
At the All-Star. I think that's a good idea, yeah. Because, a lot of the time it probably would be the superstar, but there'd be a lot of situations, like we were talking, like I mentioned, in, say, Minnesota or Carolina, where there's not really a standout guy, but maybe the players recognize the contributions from one of the unsung heroes and, nominate him. Or even like in New Jersey, maybe they would nominate Brian Boyle for what he's going through this year, you know what I mean? And there's a good story for you.
Yeah, exactly. Or you give it to, somebody on your team who it's their last year. Yeah. They're going to retire at the end of the year, or, probably not play, and then you give it to them. And then you just, it's like, and then there's a little bit more heart behind it, and a little bit more, making a conscious decision of, yeah, these aren't necessarily, I get the idea that the All-Star is all about the best players, but in these lineups that are being picked for us, it's not representative of the best players or the favorite players. It's like a mishmash of like, oh yeah, here's Crosby and Subban, but then, here's like Eric Stahl. Cool. Where's Scheifele? Well,
Scheifele's hurt. Scheifele's out for
I don't
a few
care.
months.
I don't care.
Otherwise,
Where's Scheifele?
They actually got the Central pretty good. As far as I'm concerned, I think they did a good job in the Central, other than, the whole Eric Stahl thing, and maybe Tarasenko over Braden Shen, but I digress. Blake Wheeler's having a great year, so he's the Jets representative.
There you go.
But yeah, I think what that whole, point with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman prove is that they still haven't figured this whole All-Star game out, and they're still, every year it seems like we're thinking about ideas to improve it, because although I think it would be great stories for the players that would go in that scenario, I don't know. I think the NHL would obviously say no, just because viewership would even be less because of guys like, Brian Boyle and stuff are going. Like, no one's going to really want to pay to see a team full of those guys. And again, no offense to those guys, but they want to see the big stars in the league. So it's definitely a work in progress, and it's hard because hockey is a physical sport and no one wants to play physical in case of injuries in the All-Star game. So it's, again, it'll always be a novelty, but I think there's ways that they can make it better.
There you go. So, all right, let's All-Star rosters. We'll see what happens next week. Wrap things up for us, Colin. Give us 5 weird, interesting mid-season facts, things we need to know, things we probably don't need to know, but you're going to tell us anyway.
Well, you started off the podcast saying it's like the halfway point of the season, and the reason I'm doing this now is because that's a really good sample size to kind of see where we're at and where things are going to end up. And one thing that crossed my path that kind of inspired me for this is this one stat sticking with the Central Division and how crazy it is. The goal differential by divisions. Central Division, this has probably changed slightly in the last couple of days. This is as of Friday. But Central Division has a plus 100 goal differential, and every other division is in the negatives. So Metro is -5, Atlantic was -42, and Pacific was -53, which is just crazy. As an Avalanche fan, that's why no matter how good they look or whatever way they're trending, they're in just the hardest division in the league. And I think that is a number that really stood out to me to show why. But it kind of goes to show you, when you think about it, how the amount of great defensemen that are in that division that make these goal differentials happen, like Pietrangelo, Subban, Yossi, the whole Nashville squad, really, with Coleman, Ellis, Duncan Keith, Seabrook, Suter, Eric Johnson, Tyson Barrie, Parayko, Bufflin, Trouba, Klingberg. A lot of those guys you can make a case for being in the top 20 defensemen in the whole league. And then there's some that'll soon be there with Parayko and stuff, and all those guys are in the one division. So it's just a dogfight. But to have over 100, as a division, plus 100, and every other division is in the negatives, is just crazy.
That is crazy. That is. I concur.
So that's the number one. Number two, it's an Avalanche heavy podcast, as it usually turns into.
I've only talked about the Maple Leafs once.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty crazy though. They've matched or surpassed all of their totals from last year. So they've surpassed their wins today and their points total. Rantanen, McKinnon, and Landeskog are all ahead of their points last year. And the pace that they're on a league 46-point pace better than what they had last year. And in total last year, they only had 48 points. And just to kind of add some perspective, Edmonton's the last on that spectrum with -30 points. And there's two other Canadian teams down there in the bottom four in Ottawa and Montreal. So what Colorado's done is pretty crazy. Like I said, it was a historically bad year last year, but I think they've surprised a lot of people, and hopefully it continues. So that's number two.
Proof that any team can rebound, no matter what.
Quickly.
And quickly.
In the NHL. Just got to make the right moves and get the right chemistry in the room. I think that's a big thing. That's kind of understated. Number three, again, we talked about the Vegas Golden Knights, but I'm going to focus on one of their players. And I'm a cap space or a contract geek too. So I went for Jonathan Marchessault and how much he's getting paid. So of any player that's not on an entry-level contract, he's tied for 908th in cap hit as far as players that are signed to an NHL contract. So when you do the math, he's 908th in the league as far as salary. But so there's 31 NHL teams times 23 players on the roster. That's only 714 players. So there's almost 200 players in the AHL or Europe that are getting paid more than Jonathan Marchessault. And he is over a point per game and tied for 25th in league scoring. So, that is what you call bang for buck.
Someone needs to get a new agent.
Yeah, well, he did get signed to a $5 million extension, $5 million per season. So they obviously see his worth. But the fact that Florida just kind of gave him up for free along with Riley Smith, and he wasn't really performing any worse in Florida. I mean, he wasn't at this pace, but he still was proving, that he's a good player. That was just crazy. And like I said, I'm all about finding value in players, especially when concerned with salary in a salary cap world. And it's hard to beat that with Jonathan Marchessault. So another small, underrated, undrafted guy paying his dues. I think he was undrafted, at least. That's me kind of talking out of my ass a little bit. We'll check that out. Number 4 is kind of Edmonton woes explained. So this is kind of why Edmonton's been so bad. there's only 2 teams in the league that are 500 or over when the opponents score first, and that's Tampa Bay and Vegas, who are the 2 best teams in the league. So getting that first goal in the game is super important, obviously, to winning. The Edmonton Oilers ranked 22nd in the league at 7-19-1 when they don't score the first goal, that means that they haven't scored the first goal 27 times, and that's second most in the league next to the Islanders. So if you let in the first goal in over 61% of your games and then you lose 3/4 of those games, it's really not a great way to succeed. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to, obviously, it's a few factors, but Cam Talbot hasn't really been giving them the quality starts as goaltender. So quality starts is one of those stats that were stolen from baseball with pitchers. How, like, if pitchers go X amount of innings, I think it's 5 or 6, then that's considered a quality start. And with goaltending in the NHL, they just measure that against like the league average, and Cam Talbot's well below league average. So that's kind of what's kind of shot Edmonton in the foot this year. They're always playing from behind, and that can have a huge impact on how you play, because then you don't play your game. You're chasing the game the whole time. You try to do too much, and then it just ends up being worse. So that's one of the other stories that we kind of touched on. And then last but not least, I'm in a Maple Leafs talk. Freddie Anderson, giving him some dues here. So,
all right, lay it down.
So he, again, this is as of Friday, so things might have changed slightly, but he leads the league in shots against by almost 100 shots, which is like 3 games of shots worth. And it's not like he's played a bunch more games than anyone. There's a bunch of goalies tied with him with games played, so he's just seeing a lot more rubber than anybody else. He's got 90 more saves than the next closest goaltender, and he's still 9th in save percentage, so top 10. And so it just shows kind of how much of a workhorse he is, and I don't really know, even from a Leafs fan, I know Leaf fans know he's been good, but I don't know if they understand how much he's actually been relied upon and how good he's been. Because even if you had a league average goalie in there, the Leafs are probably not in the playoffs right now. So it kind of talks to the Leafs needing maybe a better defensive scheme to prevent shots, or maybe they need to possess the puck more. I think a lot of those shots, if you look at it, are probably kept to the outside. But, I mean, in games I have watched, he's stolen quite a few this year. So Leaf fans, respect your goaltender, and I've been a huge Freddie Anderson fan since they acquired him, so I'm just glad he's paying off for them.
Well, there we go. That's a lot of really great facts.
Yeah,
a lot of great information.
I mean, it's a lot to take in. I'll tweet out a few of those just so it's easier to look at, you know what I mean, rather than me just listing off numbers. It's kind of hard to all take in. But yeah, I'll put some of those on our Twitter, and you guys can have a look for yourself and just see how crazy they are when you look at them.
And of course, if you have any interesting, crazy stats that you want to share with us, you can always tweet them to us at the NHO Show. And we will happily listen to your crazy, weird stats. Try to stump Colin.
Yeah, or just enlighten me on something that I wasn't aware of, because I can't take credit for all those stats. Some of those are stolen from different sources, especially the first one with the Central Division that popped up on my feed, and I was like, that is wild. So I always like when those things catch my eye, and there's a lot of people around the league that's their job, is to find these stats. So
there you go. All right, well, we head into kind of a bit of a slower week. A couple of teams are off this week as they take a break, and a much-needed break. I believe the Flames are off this week for their bye week, so I feel like if I was an NHL team and I got my league-mandated week off right before All-Star, I'd be like, and not on the All-Star team, I'd be so pumped. Be like, I'm going away for 2 whole weeks, and no one can stop me. That might be detrimental a little bit, but 2 weeks off is a lot of time. But I'd be like, 2 weeks off? This is amazing.
I'm sure the family and friends are loving it for sure. But it might not be the best to stay focused on the stretch run. But yeah, it's kind of a weird, since obviously there's a lot of, we were focused on World Juniors around the holidays, and the holiday that's done now, and then there's NHL bye weeks, and then there's the All-Star break, so it's kind of kind of a slow month of hockey, you could say.
It is. It is.
But nonetheless important because, like I said, here comes the stretch run and here we go, playoffs.
Here we go, playoffs, and Olympics on top of that. So there'll be a lot of hockey to talk about, whether that's NHL or Olympic talk. There'll be a lot of hockey to talk about in the coming weeks and months. Trade deadline. Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
Trade deadline, I think, is going to be a really interesting. It'll be an interesting trade. I was sad not to, a couple months ago maybe, kind of at the beginning of the season, I think I sort of tried to predict some, kind of that there would be some crazy trades so that players could go to the Olympics. Now, whether or not that actually was the case and these trades just didn't fall through or we didn't hear about them or something like that, very few, well, it didn't actually materialize. So, terrible prediction. I was wrong. So trade deadline will be will be substantially more exciting this year because none of the trades that I thought might happen happened.
Well, Storie, don't be mad at yourself. I think
you know what? I blame myself.
Trades are the hardest thing to predict, to be honest, because there's so many factors that go into them that we're not privy to on the outside. So, like for example, the Anthony Duclair trade and Jack Johnson just requesting a trade and all that. So. Yeah, I think that's a good topic for next time, though. We can speculate even more and get even more wrong. But there's some situations that make sense, like Pacioretty, Evander Kane. Are those guys going to get traded into where? So, but that'll be a topic for another day, though.
Another day. All right, so you've been watching or listening the NHO show with Storie, and Colin is the other voice on that line to chat with you. You're Colin. I'm Storie. I'm Colin.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Your Storie. Thanks for listening. Tweet us at the NHO Show. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us at thenhoshow.com. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you love. Share this. Try to stump Colin with some crazy fact or trivia question or stat.
Yeah, and
I challenge you.
Stay tuned this week, like I said, for the blog on the NHL All-Star team, if they actually did U25 versus 25 and over, and then kind of say who you think would win, because I think it would be a pretty good game. So, until next time, folks.
Until next time.
See ya.